Good evening, viewers. This is your host, Dr. Gilbert Githere, coming to your home with another session of Mazungumzo. Today we have an interesting subject, and the title is Indigenous Languages, Digital Objects, and Ontology of Web Language. Those people who are familiar with Babali, the gentleman who gave us, the British gentleman who gave us, actually he's Sir Babali. He's the one who gave us the Tim Berners-Lee, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. He's the one who gave the World Wide Web, the system we use for the internet, hypertext transfer protocol, HTTP. You all know HTTP, or you know hyper text markup language, HTML, or URL, Uniform Resource Locator, the one which if you're looking for a link, URL, Uniform Resource Locator. These are things you kind of forget. They're at the back of your mind, but these are the people, because I used to prepare web pages in 1995 using HTML. It's like if you're repairing a car and it doesn't have the most modern engine, you have the carburetor, you have all these things in the engine, and to repair them, you take them out, you repair the cutout, you repair the whatever you want to repair, a radiator, a transmitter, all this. Now, those days when you prepare a web page, it was as crude as that. But nowadays, the cars are so modern, you replace one chip with another one. If something is not working, the lights, the door, you just go and buy a chip and you come and insert it. You slip it in and the car is working. So HTML was the engine, was how you prepare a web page. Prepare it in your computer, you put all the images, you put all the information you want, and then you upload it to the server. And the server will transmit it to the people who are going to use it on the internet. That is Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP. And Uniform Resource Locator, URL, Hypertext Markup Language, HTML. And that's the way, that is Tim Berners-Lee who gave us that, the Sir Tim Berners-Lee is the one who gave us the World Wide Web page, and thanks to him. This is what I'm discussing. But I'm looking at a more important thing, that, okay, we have English being used to prepare all software, Chinese language, Cantonese or whatever it is, Urdu, if the Indians do it in Urdu, Korean or Japanese. They're actually catching up with postmodernity, where digital objects, are coded, put on the internet, and then we have them flowing out as Facebook, Instagram, and Google, Twitter, all these kind of things. And the indigenous languages are just they are using the internet. Sometimes they teach languages, like you can see Swahili being taught on the internet. That's not what I'm talking about. It's like preparing a Java, the program, or coding things in Swahili so that the statements being used are actually in Swahili. Swahili is embedded in the internet. Now, my namesake Gilbert Simondon We must give him thanks. And Hui-Yuk. And these are important names. That's why I've mentioned them. Bernard Stiegler, Hui-Yuk, and Tim Berners-Lee. And my namesake Gilbert Simondon. These are people who are important because, as I said, Sir Tim Berners-Lee is the one who gave us World Wide Web. Thanks to him. Because the internet, if you just think of it, it wows you. But like just when, let me retract a little bit and deviate a little bit. The climate change is affecting us very, very seriously. It is causing things like fires in California. You know, rivers to overflow, like Italy the other day. And oceans are rising. Vanuatu is in the Polynesian islands, is being actually threatened that it could be swallowed by the sea, the small islands like Vanuatu. Free shore. And it's alarming. Now, those threatened islands and places and fires in California are the equivalent of the disappearing languages because of the internet. Because you imagine when the internet has taken over and only 6 languages survive, it will mean we have lost archive of other languages. That's a dangerous, really, really a dangerous thing. Because like now, Hui-Yuk and my namesake Gilbert Simondon, they are actually trying to see how do we define digital objects. Because digital machines and human beings are communicating now. And the things we are calling objects, we used to call objects during Hegel's time in the phenomenology of spirits, when he discussed consciousness, the dialectics and consciousness, the positive and negative things interacting, and language to give us knowledge. They are trying to discuss objects, the tacit entities of objects of the digital world. Because objects, there can never be knowledge without objects. And there can never be knowledge without language. So you can see in that order, language, objects, and knowledge. Data, network, and logarithms. In that order. It might be perfect or not perfect. Now, I mentioned things like HTTP, HTML, Uniform Resource Locator URL, links. All these things are statements and languages in English, and they are the ones which give us the coded language that allows the internet. But what is going to happen to other languages like Swahili? Yes, Hui-Yuk, Gilbert Simondon, Bernard Stiegler, Martin Heidegger, Hegel, Descartes, Libanese, Descartes, all these people. Edmund Husserl, Plato, Aristotle, Mulevia Santa, Kwame Appiah, Lucius Outlaw. or Ngugi wa Thiong'o, all these great philosophers and thinkers and everything, they have dealt with things like language. Look at Mulevia Center. Mulevia Center established the idea of having things to be written around, to be Afrocentric. My niece, Neema Githere, Afro-presentism. She's also digesting to see how can things be defined using Afro-presentism. So as we do that, are there people trying to help indigenous languages to be used in writing as softwares for programs in the internet? Because as people struggle to define what is a digital object, because machines and human beings are communicating, people are starting to have machines and robots which have got emotions, they have got feelings, they can express anger, rage, love. We are reaching to a point where machines and human beings are interacting beautifully. But there are people who are being left behind. So if people like Tim Berners-Lee, people like Huey York, people like my namesake Gilbert Simondon are listening, in these councils where you have people putting money to develop software, we ask them kindly to incorporate people who will bring indigenous languages into the discourse, so that the meta-narratives, the language that we use to write a digital language and digital objects, address themselves to the indigenous languages of the people who are being left behind, because they will become extinct if they are left out of the internet. And this is just an introduction I'm doing, because in 1989-82, Tim Berners-Lee, came up with World Wide Web. And from there, the rest is history. So many things, so much water has passed under the bridge. So we have reached a point where the indigenous people are lucky because they have languages. And irrespective that they might be looked as they never went through all the historical development as W.W. Rostow says human beings have got to go through before they can come to postmodernity. The ability that the fact that they have languages, they can jump on the boat, they can get onto the boat at this postmodern era or modern era they have gotten on. Now they can catch up with everybody. Once you have language, you can have knowledge. And you have objects. Because objects is a universal phenomena. Language is a universal phenomena. Objects are universal phenomena. Digital objects are just a projection of the objects we have. But the digital objects are made up of statements, meta-languages. And most of the indigenous people have languages. So if they have languages, they have very deep philosophies, unwritten one. And as we say it in Mulevia Sete's language, they are in the oral traditions. There is very, very deep knowledge in oral traditions of a people. May it be the Hawaiians, the indigenous people of Australia, the indigenous people of the Americas. We should not underestimate them and the knowledge they have, untapped, completely untapped, fresh. We just got to decipher them. Like we decipher hieroglyphics. We decipher bones of dinosaurs. And now we have a deep history of what was there during the Ice Age and the dinosaur and what killed them from their DNA. So in indigenous languages, there are definitions and philosophies of objects. So it is easy for them to come on the table and write their software. Because within the Kikuyu people of the Central Province, there are so many Hegels who used oral tradition to discuss deep thoughts, deep ideas. Just like Hazel, with experience, historicity, and phenomenology, and horizons in your epochs. You know, hermeneutics. Many indigenous languages have these words in them. And funny enough, when I think deeply, I think originally, because we don't know the history of the Greeks very much, they almost spoke Kikuyu. They technology. It comes from the word teka. Kikuyus have the word teka. Indo, ideas, Indo. It's a Greek word meaning ideas. Indo. Things. Objects become things, Indo. The Greeks called things Indo. Teka. Wata, data, wata, indagwata. Shurr, pakamaka. Ehaha, nengongo. Watandai, indagwata. Ehaha, nengongo. You can decipher that. Data. It means information, data, things. And there are so many words. Linguistically, I don't know whether I am in the right to have any authority to say that. But using just the language, what I have said, and deciphering of the hieroglyphics of the Egyptians, left by the Egyptians. Wallace Burgess' book of the Dead. The Greeks seems to have spoken left a lot of Kikuyu words behind in Kamba, especially the Bantu language, rhymes very much with the Greek language. That's another story. So the indigenous people have a language which they can bring to the table and have them write softwares so that we can retain these languages and they don't disappear in the world of the digital object. And this is just the introduction, because the definition of the digital objects is what's going to help us, because we are saying machines and human beings are in this discussion. The tacit entities of digital objects, according to Hui Yuk and Gilbert Simondon, is data, network, and algorithms. And all this is in statements within a language. And that agrees very much with Michael Foucault, archaeology of language. How does chemistry end up having its own language? It is the using of data, objects, and algorithms to form the predicates that are fitting into chemistry, physics, biology. If you read Michael Foucault, Archaeology of Languages, then you will see that a people with a language are able fully to come up with a software. They have to be brought just on the table. And might be the diversity of human languages, if we preserve them, is what gonna help us to expand the sciences and the knowledge of human beings. Because might be in the end, as we bring these people to the table, we discover that one of the languages on the table is the best to use for writing HTML, the digital language. It's more precise, more concrete, more user-friendly, it's quicker, efficient. Then we say, let us use this indigenous language instead of these other ones which we have been using before. So there's a danger in losing them. Because as we go to cybernetics, because cybernetics has changed completely the way we discuss metaphysics. It's completely negated the metaphysics language. Now we are going into discussing what are the digital objects, what is the being? Because Martin Heidegger told us that Kant, Descartes, Hegel, they never went into the depth of discussing the entities of being. What is the being of a digital object? Now we come to that level now. And it is so important until we, and now I am saying, these things are still really fresh. To leave behind the indigenous people when the things are so fresh like that, we are defining the digital object. It's a big mistake. It's just like refusing to solve the problem of climate change. Because if we don't solve the problems of climate change right now, the human beings are endangering themselves and their future offsprings, because serious catastrophes could happen. And that's the same thing, equivalent when you lose indigenous languages in the internet world or global village. Because people are starting to see machines, robots, and computer programs, they're starting to be able to sense emotions, feelings, danger, happiness, love, sorrow. They are going to reach a point where they might be you got to reward them, appropriate, reward them as a group. They want group reward. Some of them will want group reward. What type of rewards will you give them? Does money make robots happy? These are things now when we know how to define digital objects, we're going to land into those kind of questions. Now, my thing is not really concerned of the development of defining digital objects as it pertains to the Western world. It's bringing in the global village to partake in that science. We're going to discuss this more in detail as I go into how do you define digital objects. And I want to thank Bernard Stegler. I want to thank Hui Yuk. I want to thank my namesake Gilbert Simondon. I want to thank people like Martin Heidegger, Hegel, Leibniz, I want to thank Descartes. I want to thank Aristotle. I want to thank Plato. I want to thank Mulevia Santa. I want to thank Appiah, Kwame Appiah. I want to thank Lucius Outlaw. I want to thank people like Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and people like Kwame Nkrumah, who discusses conscientism, and many, many thinkers, world thinkers pertaining to the knowledge that we use to discuss what is like Hume, Locke. There are so many, especially somebody like Edmund Husserl, phenomenology, experience, and knowledge, and hermeneutics. They brought completely a good science of how to do a historical analysis and digestion and deciphering of things to do with digital objects. Without them, we will not be able to do it. So as I talk, don't think these things are my own. Is sometimes I should quote verbatim, but it's not really possible. But those are the people I'll be borrowing from, and many others. So until we meet again, this is your host, Dr. Gilbert Githere, with just that small introduction about indigenous languages, digital objects, and ontology of web languages, OWL, which is actually the core, the heart, the soul of the language, any internet language, and the life of internet, OWL. Until then, ciao, ciao.